Give ear to my prayer, O God, and do not hide yourself from my supplication. Give heed to me and answer me. I am restless in my complaint and am surely distracted because of the voice of the enemy, because of the pressure of the wicked, for they bring down trouble upon me, and in anger they bear a grudge against me. My heart is in anguish within me, and the terrors of death have fallen upon me. Fear and trembling come upon me, and the horror has overwhelmed me. I said, oh, that I had wings like a dove, I would fly away and be at rest. Behold, I would wander far away. I would lodge in the wilderness. I would hasten to my place of refuge from the stormy wind and tempest. Words of those are our heart's cry because of difficulties. One of the things you'll find that was out of Psalms 55. Many of you know David, huge contributor to Psalms. David was a man of God, but it didn't mean that he didn't have difficulties. And in many of the Psalms, we hear David's cries and his anguish and his feelings of being overwhelmed. I have heard numerous times this week from individuals who feel as though they are overwhelmed with difficulties and have absolutely no idea how to escape it. It's amazing how many of those individuals are out there. I had someone reach out to me on Facebook just this week. Someone I have been acquainted with for quite some time, who knows that I'm a preacher, was going through a hard time, and suddenly, out of the blue, I received a personal message from her. There was things that she had posted on the wall, or whatever that is, and comments, and I had just kind of made a comment, just a very quick note that kind of like, I'm here. And not expecting really much, but wanting there to be something. And sure enough, I got this message, and it was one of being overwhelmed, one of wanting to just get up and run away like David, who says, oh, I wish I were on the wings of a dove, that I could fly away to a place of rest and get away from it. I don't know how many of you have ever been in that place. I think we probably have all encountered that at some time or another in our lives. It's not an uncommon thing to have occur. Even David, a man of God, encountered it. I'm going to read another psalm from him, because I was amazed at going through this, how much anguish he was in. In Psalms 142, he says, I cry aloud with my voice to the Lord. I make supplication with my voice to the Lord. I pour out my complaint before him. I declare my trouble before him. The wonderful part of this is that David knew where to turn when he was feeling this way. Quite often, the people that I encounter who are feeling this way don't. They don't know to turn to God. They don't know to let their cries go out to the Lord and not to just individuals around them. And there has to be an understanding of, and reassurance that when you cry out, God hears your cry. We often want an instant remedy. That's why you'll hear people say, I just want to get away from it all. I want to run away. I wish that I could just get up and run away. And my question always is what are you running from? And what are you running to? Where are you running to? Because the last time I checked, your problem that you had was with you. And unless somehow you're able to take it and physically put it down and flee, It's going to follow you wherever you go. It doesn't matter how far or where you run to, it will be there when you get there. It's just going to have different scenery. You can put a coat of paint on a jalopy, but it's still a jalopy. It doesn't change what it is. The problem is there. No matter what you do, running away is not going to solve your problems of being overwhelmed. Now, where or who you run to can make a difference. And it's nice in Psalm 142 that David starts to declare what his intentions are, or at least he has an idea what he needs to do. As I pour out my complaint before him, I declare my trouble before him, being God. When my spirit was overwhelmed within me, he recognizes right away, he says, you knew my path in the way where I walk. He says, they have hidden a trap for me. Who's they? All those troubles, the worldly things, the difficulties that we have, they catch us. A trap is something that is sprung on somebody when they're unaware that it may be coming. See, we sometimes become content or naive in our lives, and we're not on guard. We were talking about this in Bible study, about being alert. It says the enemy is like a prowling lion. And I was explaining in Bible study, you ever see a lion, films of lions, they do what? They lay in the bush and they sneak up until they can get within striking distance. And then suddenly they leap out, catching their prey unaware, pouncing on them. It's what the enemy does. He doesn't just announce, hey, Rose, I'm on my way. Here I come. It's not like he drops us a line, gives us a warning. He lays in wait. All the things that come upon us are, we can say, oh, it caught me by surprise, but in fact we know that it probably really didn't. You knew something was going to happen because of either your actions or inactions regarding that situation. It's funny how we want to act surprised, but I truly believe in the back of our minds we knew. That if I do this, this is what's going to happen. These are the consequences. Every action has an opposite and equal reaction. There is cause and effect. Everything that you do has an effect on something else, or anything you don't do has an effect on something else. And David knows this. He says, look to the right and see, for there is no one who regards me. There is no escape for me. No one cares for my soul. And he's talking about those around him. He's not talking about God. But sometimes we get in that position of being overwhelmed, or where we feel there's no out, there's no escape, and we think that the individuals around us don't care about our circumstances. When in fact, many times, those individuals are powerless to change your circumstances. They have nothing they can contribute to it. I've had people talk to me and say something, and they're going like, well, what do you think? And I have to reply, it's not what I think that's going to make a difference. It's what God thinks. That's going to make the difference. I could give you all the advice in the world, but it'd be mine. And David recognizes the only thing that's going to be an escape for him is what God gives him, or what he can receive from God. And that's why he continues, and he reads it, and he continues, and he cries, I cried out to you, O Lord. I said, you are my refuge. He understood that. He made the statement. See, all too many times, we're looking for other things around us for refuge. And God says, I am your refuge. Why do you not turn to me? If we don't want to be overwhelmed, we need to go to the one who can unbury us, who can pull us out of that despair. And David knows this. He's feeling kind of woe is me, but inside him he has that hope. He says, you know what, I know it. You know what, I know. God, you are my refuge. And he makes that statement. And it may not come across as being really super confident, but he makes that statement. See, because when we're overwhelmed by situations or circumstances, the one thing that it does is tear down our confidence or ability to escape it or get out of it. And that's where depression sinks in. Because suddenly we're in a state of, I can't do anything. I have no power. I am powerless. And David says, God, you are my refuge, my portion in the land of the living. Give heed to my cry, for I am brought very low. Deliver me from my persecutors, for they are too strong for me. Bring my soul out of prison, so that I may give thanks to your name. The righteous will surround me, and you will deal bountifully with me. He recognized right away, you know what? God is the one that's going to get me, and the glory is going to be his. That's what's going to happen. That's what has to happen. There's nothing else, or no other way that he can overcome being overwhelmed. My conversation with these individuals in this past week was difficult because one of the individuals for sure has no relationship with God. And it's hard to minister to somebody and explain to them how I've dealt with things in my past and it being God and turning to him. But because they don't have that relationship, that connection, that belief, that trust, that confidence is not there. So the question becomes, how do you instill that confidence in them? How do you relate to them that God is the one who delivers us? The word deliver actually means to overthrow. So if you're overwhelmed, you want to overthrow that which overwhelms you. I'm going to go back to Psalms, a lot of Psalms here. In Psalms 56, I want to read this to you in verse 1. Be gracious to me, O God, for man has trampled upon me. Fighting all day long, he oppresses me. My foes have trampled upon me all day long. For they are many who fight proudly against me. When I am afraid, and this is the important line here, when I am afraid, I will put my trust in you. In God, whose word I praise, in God I have put my trust. I shall not be afraid. For what can mere man do to me? So we kind of give all kinds of power and authority to those who are trying to oppress us, and we forget that the ultimate authority is greater than that, or is greater than them. We look to a fleshly resolution to our difficulties instead of looking to a spiritual one. And David recognizes, you know what? This is where the attacks are coming from, and I'm not afraid, because my God is greater. Because what can mere, and I like that word, mere, what can mere man do to me? He really puts it in perspective as far as authority and power in that line. Man can do nothing. You know, we worry about bill collector. This bill collector keeps calling me. You know, they're not standing in front of you. They're on the phone, for one. It's not like they're standing in front of you, holding a gun to your head, going, give me the money, give me the money, give me the money. And yet we give such great, I see people trembling when they're like, I got a call from the bill collector today. Wow. Did you have the money to pay? No. Okay. Pretty much the end of that whole thing. See, we don't look at it as a simple resolution. They call, they want something, I can't give it. That's it. Worrying about them calling you the next day is not going to solve the problem. And getting all shaken by it doesn't help your situation. If you allow that one, if you get 5 calls from bill collectors throughout the day, you're going to be pretty overwhelmed if you allow each and every single one of those to shake you, to stir you up, to get you concerned and stressed out. You know, long ago, when I think we began at church, we had a theme. It is what it is. We kind of said that a lot. It is what it is. You know what? Things are out of my control. It is what it is. You can't get blood from, what's that? You can't get blood from a turnip? Is that how the line goes? You can't. If you don't have it, you can't give it. God can get you out of your situation, your circumstances. David recognizes this. He says, for man has trampled me. He said, this is where my difficulties come. It's not God trampling me. It's not God putting me down. It's not God laying me low. And I hear people blaming God when they get in these situations all the time. Why would God do this to me? God didn't do it to you. Man did it to you, and you did it to yourself. Plain and simple. Sometimes the truth hurts, but we put ourselves in those situations. Time and time again. Bad spending habits. Bad information in relationships. Not knowing how to have a relationship. You know, I had to have a talk with an individual who got angry with their manager at work and walked out. Didn't have a whole lot of anything in the bank. I said, why would you do that? Well, I was angry and I was upset. You weren't thinking clearly. Now, unfortunately, you didn't get fired. Could have. Why? Because of allowing one incident, one emotion to fully control him. Didn't look at what that choice or that decision could have led to. Because then suddenly you're without a job. Suddenly there's no gas to put in your vehicle to go search for a job. And suddenly you're not living anywhere and you don't have an address to put down on an application if you could get gas money to go apply for a job. And then suddenly you're going to feel overwhelmed because of something that you did that you didn't think about. You weren't being led by God, and that you were being led by yourself. That's why I said we put ourselves in those situations and circumstances. And David knows, man is the one who's trampling me. The things of the world are out there. They're trying to beat me down. God's not. And I'm amazed when I hear people blaming God for stuff, as though it absolves them of any of the what's the word I'm looking for? Responsibility. Thank you. Boy, that word just. That's why you're here. That's right. Thank you. It says, I put my trust in God. That's what David is. I put my trust in God. Even in Jeremiah 17, verse 5, he says, thus says the Lord, cursed is the man who trusts in mankind and makes flesh his strength. Now, if you look at the direction this is going, and where God wants it to go, God says, stop depending upon man to resolve your issues. And see, and the people that I've been speaking with, and this person I spoke with just the other night on Facebook, everything was about looking for an answer in a worldly way. Looking to man for an answer. And God says, don't put your solution to your problems in the flesh. Don't put all your dependency upon that. That's not where it's going to come from. I can't look to Janet and say, Janet solved my problem. You know, I think I'll go over to Charlie's house. Maybe he's got a solution. I think I'll get together with Mike. I think he probably has the answer. Because he's tall. Well, see, you laugh about that, but see how we can look at perception. You know, right away, I'm going to move furniture from my house. I'm going to call Mike because he's big. You know what? I know big guys who aren't strong. But our perception is because a person's big, they must be able to carry that. We look at a person sitting next to us in church, and because we see them strong in their faith while they're sitting in this building, we suddenly think that they are strong in their faith all the time. And we start turning to things that we perceive are the answers in a worldly way. If I want to talk to God and have God resolve my dilemma, I'm not going to go to Rose. Although God is in her, I think the direct line to God would be better. Why pay a middleman if you can get it direct? And God said, this is God stating this. Cursed is the man who trusts in mankind and makes flesh his strength. You're going to have problems if that's going to be the way you pursue things. If you're feeling overwhelmed, don't look to man for the answers. David already told us where he was going to look, where he was going to cry out. In Psalms 33, it says a king is not saved by a mighty army. That means a king that fights, if he's got God on his side, it's not the army that that defeats the enemy. It's God defeating the enemy. If you're going into battle with the worldly things, if you're feeling overwhelmed and you want to attack that, it's not everybody around you pitching in to do that. It's God going ahead of you and paving the way. It's God on your side that gives you the might and the strength. That's the thing, the strength. See, because often when we're feeling overwhelmed, we have no energy. We feel as though we're just not strong enough to be able to conquer it, to put it underfoot, to be able to stay the course, to be able to fight the fight. We don't feel like we've got it within us. And you're right. In Psalm 68, I get all kinds of bookmarks here. In Psalm 68, verse 20, it reads, God is to us a God of deliverances. God is to us a God. It is God who will deliver us from being overwhelmed. It is God who will deliver us and set us free. The word deliver also means to liberate, to set free. That's really what we want. When we're feeling buried, we want to be free from that. We want to be delivered from it. I can go talk to anybody in the world I want about my circumstances. But I'm not going to get deliverance from that. See, being free isn't just being free of the circumstances. It's being free in our spirit of defeatism. God lifts us up. Not only does He help us to overcome, but He strengthens us. He gives us a mindset that changes. We had quite a conversation at Bible study also about trust, about trusting God, about building our trust in God. I don't know why when God does something wonderful to us and does deliver us from something, our trust in Him doesn't increase. When it should. How many of us shop or go to a same store or something because, well, I can trust them to do it right? I'm going to go and get my oil change at this particular place. Why? Because when they do it right. When I went to the other place, the drain plug wasn't on all tight enough. I was dripping oil. They put the wrong oil in it, or whatever. So we go to a place where we can trust, where we can depend upon them to do what they say they're going to do. We can rely upon them. Well, when God does something for us, and He does something for us each and every day, and this is where I'm going with this, doesn't that build your trust in Him? Shouldn't it build your trust in Him? And if you think about the daily things He does for you, and if you actually truly acknowledge the fact that God does some wonderful things for each and every one of us on a daily basis, within a week, your trust should be sky high. After a month, there should never be any doubts. And yet we go years without our trust ever increasing in God. Without ever truly believing that He can provide the means for our escape and deliverance. Put it in that perspective. If you truly trust God, and you truly acknowledge that, well, He's the one who got me out of this jam, and you know that you can rely and depend upon Him, why doesn't your trust in Him increase? It's a big issue that when I talk to people is building their trust in God. I don't know if God can. He's been doing it for 30 years for you. And you're making a statement of, I don't know if He can. Or even if He's been doing it for a year, if He's been doing it for a month, how could you make a statement of, I'm not sure God can? Building our trust in God is what saves us. One of the things that kind of came to mind was we get into it when we're feeling overwhelmed, we're in a position where we feel as though there is no hope for us. And I started thinking about it, and I'm thinking, when the winter comes, the snow comes, and the cold, and it's harsh, and it's not a pleasant time because we can't be outside doing the things we enjoy, but it's just harsh. We don't really like winter. Yet, even through the harshest of winters, spring does arrive, and with it comes new life. It's a season that we go through in our lives, but the next season is there. That brings about a change. It brings newness, if we let it. Winters may be harsh, but spring is glorious because of the new life it brings. In the book of Ephesians, in chapter 6, verse 10, it says, "Finally, be strong in the Lord and in the strength of his might." See, it's not by our power. It's not by someone sitting next to us. It's not by our mom, our dad, our uncle, our co-worker, or a lawyer, or whomever. The power is not in them. The strength doesn't come from them. Be strong in the Lord and in the strength of his might. Put on the full armor of God so that you will be able to stand firm against the schemes of the devil. And really, the plots that are out there against us are numerous. To tear us down, to get us to a point where we don't bring glory to the name of God. But if we stand firm and we derive our strength from God, then we can get through it. We can persevere. We can overcome. It's the only way to do it. But we have to trust God. Trust that he will do it. Trust that he will deliver us. Believe it. You can speak it, but if you don't believe it, it's just words. You can go to Jiffy Lube and they say, we're the best there is, but if they don't provide the service that you come to expect because of what they say, you're not going to return there. Then it just becomes words that they're making a statement. See, we can make a statement. I trust in God. I believe in God. I have faith in God. I know God will give me the strength to overcome this. And then we go back on, I'm so overwhelmed. I'm never going to get out of this. Well, what did you just say? Did you hear yourself when you spoke? See, we have to believe in what we're saying. If you don't believe in those things, then you need to be made stronger in it. That's what it's saying. You need to be strong in the Word. You need to be strong in God. If you don't believe the Word you're saying, then you need to get more strength that you can believe. You need to start looking at your life and seeing where God has delivered you over and over. And that you can rely on him and you can depend on him. And that believing in his Word does not come up void. It's not empty. It's not just words on a paper, but statements that are true. It's God's Word. It's God's promise. Being overwhelmed means you don't have any hope. God says none of my children should feel that way. None of them. If you don't feel strong, then draw off of my might. That's what he says. Draw off your strength from me. If you truly believe that I am a mighty God, then you come to the source. And I'll show you how to be strong. I'll show you how to persevere. I'll show you how to overcome. I'll show you how to defeat that which would destroy you. You want to get out of depression? What do they say? When people are depressed, they need to get busy. I can think of no thing better to be busy doing than pursuing God and seeing where his strength lies and how that strength can be my strength. There is strength in the Word of God. There is power in the Word of God. Why? Because it comes from God. The only way to beat depression and the feeling of being overwhelmed is to grab the resource, the greatest resource you have, and that's God. His strength, his might, his power, and his authority over that. Man doesn't have authority over you. God has authority over you. That's why that statement, what can man do to me? Nothing. Someone goes, well, what if a guy killed me? He had power. But God's greater because you escape death, don't you? You reside with him. So even in that, where you can look at a man being strong in that regard, he's actually weak because he doesn't really accomplish what he meant to accomplish. Man can do nothing for us. God can do everything. And 2 Samuel makes the statement is made in chapter 22. It says, "And David spoke the words of this song to the Lord in a day that the Lord delivered him from the hand of all his enemies and from the hand of Saul." See, so David experienced deliverance. When it says he spoke the words of this song, his heart sung out. His heart was singing. When you overcome something, don't you feel good? Kind of snapping your fingers. Yeah! Yep. You know what? Not going to worry about that anymore. It's all taken care of. It's all been put underfoot. I got it covered. God took care of it. And you just feel that joyous thing. Now, this is David. David's going, you know what? Look what God did. He's not taking any credit for anything. He said, look what God did. He said, the Lord is my rock and my fortress and my deliverer. My God, my rock in whom I take refuge. My shield and the horn of my salvation. My stronghold and my refuge. My Savior, you save me from violence. I call upon the Lord who is worthy to be praised, and I am saved from my enemies. So I call upon the Lord who is worthy to be praised, and I am saved from my enemies. For the waves of death encompassed me. The torrents of destruction overwhelmed me. The cords of Sheol surrounded me. The snares of death confronted me. In my distress I call upon the Lord. Yes, I cried out to God, and from his temple he heard my voice, and my cry for help came into his ears. Then the earth shook and quaked, and the foundations of heaven were trembling, and were shaken because he was angry. Smoke went out of his nostrils. Fire from his mouth devoured. Coals were kindled by it. He bowed the heavens also, and came down with thick darkness under his feet. And he rode on a cherub, and flew, and he appeared on the wings of the wind. And he made darkness, canopies around him, a mass of waters, thick clouds of the sky, from the brightness before him. Coals of fire were kindled. The Lord thundered from heaven. He's going on and said, God was so great in my deliverance. He didn't come in just a weak way. He came in a mighty way. And he destroyed those who would try to come against me. He delivered me from it. And he saw how the might, the power of God was. Those descriptives that he's saying are descriptives of how he felt when God did this. This isn't something he saw visually that was there. It was something in how he envisioned how God delivered him. It wasn't something that God actually did in that regard, but this is how he felt in his heart. God had to be angry. God heard my cry. God came down in a mighty way, and God delivered me from my enemies. So what he's proclaiming is that God was greater than anything or anyone that came against him. And he believed it. He believed it in all his heart, or he wouldn't have cried out for it. And now he's singing God's praises for all that he did. And he's singing how great God is. How wonderful God is. How mighty God is. And it kind of, he probably wants to almost kick himself. Look, why didn't I just think about this a lot sooner? How did I even get to a point of feeling that those had any authority over me, that I was feeling overwhelmed with all this? When here's this God who came down, my God, in a mighty way and overcame everything. The last verse that I have is in Philippians. And it goes, if you've heard what I've been talking about in the songs that we're singing, and how they've gone hand in hand, how they've talked about the mercies from heaven flowing upon us, that we can receive. You're feeling overwhelmed. You want to have that washed away. It's the mercies from heaven that rain down that will wash that away. The power of God. In Philippians chapter 4, verse 13, what song did we sing? It says, I can do all things through him who strengthens me. With God, all things are possible. I can do. It doesn't say I can do a few things. I can overcome some of the things that come against me. God can clear some of the way for me. I can almost make it through the day. I almost have enough strength to overcome that which is coming against me. No. I can do all things through Him who strengthens me. Your strength comes from the Lord. Your strength doesn't come from flesh. You can work out, pump iron. You may have physical strength, but physical strength is not going to overcome the things that overwhelm you, not unless you're buried in an avalanche and you have to shovel your way out. But even then, God will show you the way to shovel. You may be shoveling down and God says, nope, you need to go that way. You may be going to the left and God says you need to go to the right. You can do nothing on your own, out of your own strength. It's only through the strength of God. It's the God who strengthens you that you can overcome those things that are in your life. There are obstacles that are in your path. Even the smallest of ones. See, a lot of times we ignore the small ones. And we shouldn't. Because you get a whole bunch of small ones. And suddenly it's a great big one. See, a lot of times when we talk about being overwhelmed, we kind of picture just one thing that just poof, fell on us. You look at an avalanche, an avalanche can start with one small, the weight of one snowflake. The weight of one snowflake can cause an avalanche. It's just the last snowflake. And then it all comes rolling down, and it picks up power as it goes down. Now, if you're at the top of that avalanche and it brushes by you, that's one thing. But now you're at the bottom of it where it all falls on you. Don't forget, each and every bit of that snow was one single snowflake. If you ignore the small things, it can become big things. See, and a lot of times that's our problem. Because it's not just one huge problem we're trying to overcome. We're trying to overcome many problems. And I kind of equate it to the little boy with the hole in the dike, and he sticks a finger in here, and whoops, and there's one over here, and he's got to try to plug it up over here, and suddenly he's just doesn't have the ability to stop the leaking. And eventually, the dike breaks, and he's overwhelmed by the flow. You need to attend to the smallest of things and not ignore them. For instance, if you had a difference of opinion with somebody, don't let it go. Get it settled. Because later on it can add to. You'll come at the most inopportune time. But whatever you do, look to the Lord for your strength. One thing David repeated over and over and over was, the Lord is my refuge. One of the things that goes along with this, one of the things that, or the responsibility on our part, becomes ministering to other people, letting them know where that refuge is. A lot of times we hear somebody cry out to God, and we kind of go, okay, God, it's yours. And that's wonderful, but God also says, I put you in earshot, and I've given you the power and the authority to be able to speak into that. You go, well, I don't have the authority. God has more authority, but God dwells within you. God has given you His word, and God has showed you exactly what he is. Each and every one of us here have experienced the hand of God giving us mercies. The reason we go through troubled times sometimes is not for ourselves, but for others. So we can help them get through those difficulties. We can tell them how we persevered. That's why it's important that we not be afraid to minister to others and reach out. Are we not God's hands and feet? Quite often we want God himself to show up and do it. So when the word says about not looking towards man, but you're not looking, if you go to Tammy for something, you're not looking for Tammy's answers. You're looking for God's answers that Tammy happens to hold. If you go to Charlie or whomever, you're not looking to the person. You're not looking to the flesh. You're looking to the spirit that is within them, which is the Spirit of God. When people come to a church for help, it's not the people that are helping. It's the Spirit of God that is helping. Our responsibility to minister to those who are feeling overwhelmed is just that. It is our responsibility. God has placed us in a position of being able to attend to their spiritual needs. Now, I will say this, if God gives you nothing, then do nothing. Sometimes it's just lending an ear to it. But do not be afraid to put yourself in the midst of it. If I wouldn't have reached out and made the initial comment to this girl, she never would have wrote me. And I wrote her. And she wrote me. And I have no idea, what will happen with that. I just know that I was obedient in showing her where her strength can come from, where her refuge was. We have to walk in that. We have to believe it. See, this word today was, I don't know if any of you are feeling overwhelmed, but I'll bet you know somebody who does. If it's not you, then you're going to know, you do know somebody who's probably feeling just a little bit buried. And if they're not there yet, that's a good thing, because this allows you to recognize it and maybe step in. I take refuge in the Lord. I trust in the Lord, and it's not a statement I make lightly. I'm thankful that I can't think of any difficulties I've had recently in my life, anything major, but I do know that if they were to come, I would get through. I would live to see the spring and new life, that new life being in me, and the strength that God has given me to endure. And I pray that you would do the same, and that you would spread the word to those who don't know. When we were given the Great Commission to go out into all the world and spread the gospel, is this not part of the gospel? Is this not something that people need to hear? You can say that, well, that's pretty much every Sunday the word you bring, but we have to look at what tears down people and show them how God can build them up. And let God do that. So, being overwhelmed, I think it's time to do just the opposite, to overthrow, to be delivered from that, and to recognize where your strength comes from. And that's God. And that's his word for the day.